of the District 7 Safety Academy? Okay. I'm going to start over. Sorry, folks. Good morning. I wanted to welcome all of you to the second series of the District 7 Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. And today we'll have a very interesting topic on the 5 E's. My name is Dennis Spalloon, and I'm the District 7 Safety Academy coordinator and also a District 7 consultant. And today we'll hear about the 5E approach to safety, and that will be presented by Larry Hagan with Hagan Consulting Services and also a District 7 consultant. But before that begins, I want to give you a quick introduction. There have been a couple changes I think will be of interest to you. One of the key things is I just wanted to mention again is some webinars are to provide information regarding safety related issues to enhance your local safety programs. So that's the purpose of this academy out of District 7. And this slide kind of indicates when we started in Wednesday, March 19th, 2014. And they run about, they start about 10 o'clock, but 10:05 normally, and we end by 12 o'clock. And I don't think we've had too many that have gone to 12 o'clock. Very few, maybe one or two. The seminar series that we're in right now will end in December 10th or on December 10th, 2014. They're usually mostly around an hour, no more than 2. And if you want to register for any additional webinars, you go to the link here on the SurveyMonkey. You can also go to www.tampabaytrafficsafety.com, which is a new website that's being pulled together, and you can look at the previous webinars and also additional information. And you can see that down below also. Then today is the 5E approach to safety. And one of the things today I wanted to bring out was that we are going to be providing PDHs for PEs, and there is a form that you need to fill out for each session, and you'll get a certificate for one PDH, and you'll work through. It's even indicated on the form that you would send the form by email to PDH coordinator, which happens to be Larry Hagan, who's presenting today, or you can fax to this number that he's indicated on the slide, 866-426-5153. And you download the form. This is the link that you would go to, and that is the new website that's being put together. And you would go under the Safety Academy tab to the General Resources, and the form would be listed there. So that's currently in place. So if you are a PE, be sure to either go to the announcement that Anthony Chamont sent to you today for the meeting, and there's a link there, or you can go in to this presentation out on the TampaBayTrafficSafety.com, and you can get the form and you can submit that. This session has also been submitted for AICPCM credit for the American Institute of Certified Planners, and that's currently underway. So we will give you more information about that. Okay, and here is my contact information. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I was muted earlier when I was trying to tell you that I'm about to begin the recording. My apologies for that. I'm going to share my desktop real quick to show you what the website looks like. We've been making some changes to the design of this site. There is no longer a tab across the top for the Safety Academy. Now things are divided under Education, Engineering, Enforcement, and Emergency Services, something that we're going to learn about today when we talk about the E approach to safety. The Safety Academy is under the Education tab. Here's all the educational efforts that are going on in FDOT District 7 under Safety Academy. This is where we are right now, the Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. You see we have an announcement over here that PDHs are now available today's presentation, the dialing number, and the meeting ID are all here. So if you ever need to log into one of these webinars, know that you can go to this site and the information is always here. All upcoming meetings are in the calendar, and the upcoming URLs and calling numbers and meeting IDs for all the meetings are posted here in the announcements. Down at the very bottom is the PDH request form that Dennis was just talking about. Click on this, fill it out, and I guess, are we emailing this back to Larry?
Yes, you can email it to me, or I have a toll-free fax number. It's on the form, and you can just, if you want to just print it so you have a hard copy and fax it to me, that's fine too.
Okay, great. And then, so you know as well, also the PDF of today's presentation and last week's is here, and the recording from last week's presentation is here as well. So this is the place to go to for all the information regarding the Academy. And I'll turn it over now to Larry for his presentation.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Welcome, everyone. My name is Larry Hagan. I think I met most of the folks that are probably on the call, but if I haven't had the opportunity to meet you, I am, as Dennis mentioned, one of the safety consultants working with District 7. My experience goes back over 25 years working all throughout Florida. I've worked in the public sector for DOT and for county government. I've worked in the private sector for various consulting firms, and I've also worked in academia, working at the University of Florida and the University of South Florida. So I've got experience in traffic engineering and safety from all three perspectives, and so that has helped, I think, to form what I call the 5E approach to safety, which we're going to look at here today. I'm old school. I've been around, like I said, over 25 years doing this stuff, and years ago we started out with the 3 E's of safety: engineering, enforcement, and education. And those were the 3 E's, and we talked about how the 3 E's all needed to work together towards safety. And then someone said, hey, wait a minute, we need to add another E. So instead of the 3 E's of safety, it's the 4 E's of safety: engineering, enforcement, education, and EMS, or emergency services. Some now say emergency management. I still use EMS, emergency medical services, the people that respond to the crashes. Certainly, they have a lot to do with safety, and we'll see that as we get further into this. But now it's my turn to say, wait a minute, we've left somebody out. There's really 5 E's to safety. There's somebody else we have left out, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But first I want to go through the other E's, talk about those some. I am an engineer, so I'll be concentrating a lot of my discussion on engineering. I've never been a law enforcement officer, and so I can't say a whole lot about law enforcement other than the interactions I've had with them, but I'll talk a little bit about enforcement. Education is certainly something we're doing here today, and I've done a lot of EMS. Again, I've worked with some EMS people, but I've never been an EMS technician or EMS emergency responder myself, so I can share a little bit, and then, as I said, I'll get to that 5th E in a little bit. I want to first talk about engineering. Often, most of us that are on this call think about the highway side of engineering, but there's also a lot of good engineering related to safety that has to do with the vehicle itself. And there's been a lot of advancements over the last 20, 30 years to really make the car safer as well. Certainly seat belts, airbags, the anti-lock brake systems, crash testing. They do a lot of crash testing and developing crumple zones in the cars, and making sure the car can respond to crashes so that the occupants aren't killed or injured seriously. There's a lot of engineering on the car side, and so I don't want to dismiss that, because that's certainly a big part of safety, but I don't think anyone here is designing cars or any of that kind of stuff. But again, there's some important engineering elements within the car to make things much safer as well. We're going to be mainly focusing on, from the engineering side, the highway side of safety, and we'll begin by looking at a warning sign. A warning sign, the purpose of the warning sign, as the slide says, to call attention to unexpected conditions and to situations that might not be readily apparent to the road users. That's what a warning sign is all about. You're going to let the motorist or whoever the road user is, could be a pedestrian or something, that there's something you may not perceive up ahead, and that's what a warning sign is all about. Now, some things we don't need warning signs for, and certainly one of the things that we have to avoid as we try to make our roads safer is to put up too many signs. Too many signs, and there's just too much clutter up there, and it doesn't make the road safer. It makes it less safe if you have too many signs. I mean, certainly I'm driving down this road. Yeah, the curve ahead is a good warning sign because it looks like it's on the other side of this hill. I can't see that the roadway curves to the left, so that's a very good use of a warning sign here. I probably do not need a warning sign saying driveway ahead. I can see that there's a driveway here, and so we can get crazy and over pollute the environment with warning signs that are not needed. We need to use the signs properly, and so we need to use the signs in the right context, and again, to bring attention to things that may not be readily apparent. It's an important concept to remember, and I'll repeat it throughout this presentation. A sign cannot fix bad engineering. And if the engineering's bad, just sticking up a sign isn't going to fix the problem. And so a sign can help, but a sign can't fix bad engineering. And so we want to use the signs properly and judiciously to accomplish a safer roadway environment. But again, too many signs and people tend to ignore them. So be careful in your use of signs. Some signs do serve a real good purpose. This is something we've been doing a lot of in District 7, the speed feedback sign in the school zone. That's because the drivers are texting, putting on makeup, combing their hair, adjusting their tie, playing with the radio, and this kind of stuff. Oh gosh, I'm going too fast through the school zone. So it kind of wakes up the driver, hey, slow down, you're in a school zone. And so they've been very useful, very effective, because as people drive through school zones, they often are not paying attention to their speedometer, and especially if you have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in a school zone, that's pretty slow. And you have to really be paying attention to keep your speed down at that level. So again, that's a good use of a sign, and we have used a lot of those throughout the region there in Tampa Bay area. Another good traffic control device, a supplement to a sign, the bright sticks. Many of you have seen these all over the district. It's a supplemental piece of reflective material added to the post of the sign. Really gives a lot of punch to the sign, so you can really see the sign better day and night. If you look at the picture on the left, this is daytime, and you can see the bright yellow underneath the sign, the turn to the right sign ahead here, and also down the road, the chevron signs around that turn to the right. They look bright during the day, but they really stand out at night, make the sign really stand out at night. So the bright stick is a really good supplement to help make the signs stand out at night so people can see them, so the motorists can see the sign and take the warning they need to take. So very good use of a sign supplement here. This is an additional sign in advance of a traffic signal. This is in Pasco County area, and what was happening, there's a signal up ahead here. This picture was taken in February when there's no vegetation on the trees that are in the median, the little shrubs that are in the median. Later on in the spring and during the summer, when all the leaves are in, you really can't see that signal up ahead. The vegetation obscures the signal. It's around the curve, and they were having a lot of rear-end crashes because people were suddenly running up on the back of a queue that had formed from the traffic signal. And so one of the things the district did, we went out and looked at it and said, hey, this might be a good place for signal ahead signs. We dropped in these signal ahead signs with the solar flashers, and so it's giving active warning with the flashers that there's a signal up ahead. Again, it's something you can see a little bit right here in this picture, but again, when it's in spring and summer and the leaves are on those little shrubs in the median, the signal's kind of hidden from you until you get around the curve. So again, a good use of signs in this in this location, because again, that location, the signal is kind of hidden from the approaching motorist if you're an unfamiliar driver, and we get plenty of those in Florida, people that are tourists or the snowbirds that come down and so forth. So good use of signing in this case to help supplement the signal there. Quick curb is another engineering improvement, and in this case it's being used to close off a median opening. In some cases, if you're having a lot of crashes in a median opening location, having crashes, people just getting into severe left turn type crashes, sometimes the best thing to do is close off that median. And so quick curb is an easy thing to install. It can be deployed quickly and then follow up later with a project to put in the asphalt or concrete to really close off that median properly. But quick curb, a good engineering fix for some situations. Again, it's one of the tools in the toolbox, and so at the appropriate time we want to pull the appropriate tool out of our toolbox there. Another tool we've been deploying some throughout the District 7 area is the audible and vibratory markings. It's a texture that's put into the markings so that as you drive over them, it gives you audible, sound, and vibratory, tactile type feedback to let you know you've crossed this line. And so it's very useful for reducing run-off-the-road crashes. The type that's shown right here in this picture is fairly expensive to lay down. Apparently it's a very proprietary die that cuts the grooves in, and so it's fairly expensive. It's not something you want to do on every road, but certainly on roadways where you're having a lot of run-off-the-road crashes, it may be something to think about. It, again, just gives a both audible vibratory sound and the tactile vibratory feel that you can feel in the steering wheel as you drive over these markings. So it really helps to reduce the run-off-the-road crashes. A similar treatment, less expensive, is what we call the cookie treatment, and there's little plastic discs that get put down as the line gets sprayed with thermoplastic, and this again provides the same kind of thing. You hear the thump 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 as you run over these things, and you can feel the little bumps as you run over the little cookies. It's shown here, the yellow line on the left, the white line on the right, as it should be. And so again, it's just to wake up the motorist that you're about to leave the roadway. And so it again just gives you audible and tactile feedback that you're crossing the line now, wake up. And so it again is designed to get those people that are maybe drowsy and drifting off the road a little, or people that are not paying full attention, so that they can start paying full attention back to their driving task. So that's what the audible and vibratory markings are all about. Another engineering enhancement that we're doing, high-emphasis pedestrian crossings. This is one location that we did through the design build push button. And here is the before condition on the left, where we had just the standard 12-inch white markings. And then we added in the 24-inch rungs of the ladder, if you will. The District 7 preference is for this ladder-style high-emphasis pedestrian crossing marking. And the reason is really that it really makes it much, much more visible to the approaching motorist. As you see on this slide, the just a lateral 12-inch stripe, very, very narrow cone of visibility for the approaching driver, whereas the big, wide 24-inch, 10-foot crosswalk width marking gives you over 10 times the angle of visibility there. District 7, we use both of these. So we've got the combination of the lateral and the longitudinal marking. And so again, just to enhance the visibility of the marking. And that's, I think, using good engineering, because one of the things you want to do is tell the motorist, expect pedestrians at this location. And you tell the pedestrians, this is the location we want you to cross. And if we can get everybody on the same page, you have a much better likelihood that the drivers will see the pedestrians will see the drivers, and they won't run into each other. So that's what this approach to the high emphasis markings is all about. So yeah, District 7 preference is, as I said, the ladder style marking where we use both. So that's our approach. All right, approximately 25% of the fatal crashes on the roadways occur on horizontal curves. And so, where the alignment changes is where people run off the road because they're too busy texting or not paying attention, sleeping, or whatever. And so most of the fatal crashes occur where the roadway changes alignment, in horizontal curves like this. So here's a horizontal curve. What do we do? What are the kind of things that we do to make these horizontal curves safer? Because again, 25% of the fatalities occur on curves like this. So some of the things we can do: improve delineation, have good markings, signing, and also what's called super elevation. If you're not a roadway design person, super elevation is the banking of the roadway. And so in this case, it's banked up on the left side, down on the right side, so that it helps reduce the lateral forces of your vehicle with the intent to slide out of the curve. And so that super elevation allows you to drive through the curve at a little bit higher speed than you could without the super elevation. Also helps you feel the curve as you go into it. It's like in the Daytona Speedway. If you've ever been to a NASCAR race, Daytona Speedway is very highly banked, very high super elevation rate, if you will, and so it allows those cars to go by at 200 miles an hour. Without that super elevation, they'd slide off the road at 200 miles an hour. But that's what super elevation's all about. Interesting. I've been to the Daytona Speedway, and if you're not going 85 miles an hour, the super elevation is so high you'll slide into the infield. You'll slide to the middle. So you have to be going at least about 85 miles an hour because of that super elevation, just to stay on the curves there at Daytona. I'm told the Florida Highway Patrol in their training ground has a roadway with a negative super elevation, so it slopes away from you on the curve. And that's one of the things they do for the officers to train them so they can drive through all kinds of bizarre situations that the law enforcement officers have to deal with. I've never been there, but it's certainly something I'd like to see. But a roadway with a negative super elevation would certainly get you to go slowly, because you would very easily tend to roll off the road rather than stay on the road. So anyhow, these are the kind of engineering things we do to keep people on the road. Good delineation so they know where they're supposed to operate. Good markings like we see in this case. We've got good solid yellow stripes on the left with RPMs, which are very helpful at night and in the rain, especially when it's real rainy. The RPMs give you good clear delineation where you're supposed to be. And signing, sometimes we'll have signing around the curve. There's not any on this curve, which I'm kind of surprised at, but we'll see some in a minute. And again, super elevation, all those things play together to make the curves safer. Here's a curve that doesn't have a lot of super elevation, a much flatter curve, but again, we've got signing, we've got good markings, delineation, and all kinds of things to help guide someone through this curve. And so the warning signing is there. It's got the 35 mile an hour supplemental advisory plaque. It's got flashers there to let you know, hey, there's a curve here, the road really curves. And a lot of good things. The chevrons guide you through the curves, and so it looks real good in the daytime. You can see it real good. I'm sure this looks pretty good at night as well, because a lot of good stuff put into this curve to make it better. It doesn't, like I said, doesn't look like it has too much super elevation. It looks like there might be just a little, but again, a fairly well engineered curve. There's guardrail around it, so I suspect there was probably an incident or several incidents where vehicles had left the curve, and that's why there's all the signing and the striping and all the enhancements they have here, because this is probably a location where they had several vehicles run off the road. And so it looks like they've made some treatments here. Some of the things are pretty good. Some of the things, I might do a little differently if I could. Certainly I'd go through here. It looks like there's some vegetation starting to grow around the guardrail, and that's going to cover up some of the reflectors that we have in the guardrail that do also guide people through the curve. So I'd get out there and cut back some of that vegetation with the weed whacker and that kind of stuff. But that's some of the maintenance stuff you have to do as well. Once we put in the engineering, you have to maintain it so that it does all the things that you intend it to do. So engineering has to tie in well with the maintenance. So, like I said, good horizontal curve here, good delineation, good signing and marking, a pretty good engineered setup here in this curve. This is a roadway. This picture's a few years old, but this was a county road, not in Florida, but a county road that had recently been resurfaced. When they did the resurfacing, they didn't really pull all the shoulder material back up properly, and it left this big, huge drop-off on the edge. What happens quite frequently where you have that situation, if a vehicle leaves the pavement, gets two wheels off the pavement into that dirt area, if the vehicle tries to get back on the pavement, the wheel has a tough time crawling back up that steep edge. And it's actually the number one cause of vehicle rollover is this kind of situation. And often when you have this type of drop-off, pavement edge drop-off, when a vehicle does finally catch, the driver has really oversteered, and so the vehicle wheel will catch and the vehicle will shoot across the street and either go head on into a vehicle or head on into something on the other side of the road. In this case, the vehicle, I believe, went head on into a dump truck and resulted in 3 fatalities. So that pavement edge drop-off is a serious issue. And one of the solutions, or one of the countermeasures, if you will, for pavement edge drop-off is what's called a safety edge. This is a picture of safety edge being installed. Safety edge is a 30-degree angle, bevel, if you will, on the edge of the pavement as it's being resurfaced. For those of us like myself, a few years with a little bit of gray hair and everything, that we can see that angle there. It kind of looks like that 30, 60, 90 triangle we used to have when we did drafting. For those of you new guys that are, all you've ever done was CAD, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but some of us older guys will remember that 30, 60, 90 triangle. That's what basically the safety edge kind of looks like there. And so the way you set in the safety edge, again, there's a special shoe put into your paving equipment, and you create that 30-degree angle, and then you rebuild the shoulder all the way back up to the top of the flat surface. And so the shoulder overlays that beveled safety edge. And that's so that as things start to wear away at your shoulder, you've still got some safety edge there to allow vehicles to get back up on the roadway surface easily. So, here we've got it laid out, but they still need to come back in, build a shoulder up to the flat surface, and that's how safety edge is supposed to work. It's a very good treatment, great success all over the country doing this. This is one of Federal Highway Administration's proven countermeasures to make roads safer, virtually eliminate pavement edge drop-off through the use of safety edge. Many states are using it. Florida hasn't jumped into the safety edge bandwagon yet, although a few counties, I know the Ocala area, Marion County, Dr. John Goodnight has done some projects there where they've retrofitted, put in some safety edge, and again having good success with it there. Here's another engineering project. This was in Tampa area, Nebraska Avenue, and this is the before condition. We had a 4-lane undivided roadway, and if you have someone wanting to turn left, well, they can block up the left lane. And if you have somebody, or if a bus is stopping to load or unload passengers, that can block up the right lane. And so lots of different things going on in this corridor, and lots of congestion just due to left turns, buses, right turns, other things like that. And so they went through and did a safety project and did some engineering changes to Nebraska Avenue here. And let's look at some of the changes that they've made here in Nebraska. This is what it looks like, in the after condition. They took the 4-lane divided and made it a 2-lane undivided. And you say, gosh, didn't that really affect capacity? Well, no, they had so many blockages, if you will, with left turns, buses, and all those kind of things. It seems to be working just fine in the 2-lane divided condition versus the 4-lane undivided condition. And so, again, this is what it looks like after the changes. Some significant improvements there. We have added bus bays in here, so when the buses are loading and unloading passengers, they pull off to the side of the road here, and the through vehicles continue on their way. So no blocking by the buses. Another thing they've added by squeezing down from 4 lanes to 2 plus the left turn lane and the median is bike lanes. So we've been able to add bicycle facilities in here. Another thing, mid-block ped crossings. Again, much safer mid-block crossings now. 2 moving lanes, left turn lane. They put in a pedestrian refuge island there to kind of shield and protect the crossing as well. And it just created a safer environment for pedestrians to cross in a mid-block situation there. So much better situation for unprotected pedestrians, if you will, through this. Also done some pedestrian upgrades at the signals. This location, they put in the paver look, the brick paver look in the pedestrian crosswalks rather than the high emphasis crosswalks. Again, looks really highly visible here. This isn't something the state typically does. The brick paver look, state has some issues with the maintenance of those kind of things, but the local government really wanted the brick paver look, and so it looks real nice. It looks real pretty here. You can see it's very visible, good contrast and everything to the approaching motors. Hey, this is where the pedestrians are supposed to be. But even with all the pedestrian signal upgrades, does everybody see the problem here? The pedestrian is crossing against the signal. The green light, we're looking straight into the green light, and that pedestrian is crossing against the green light. So even though we've got some good engineering here, it looks like our user isn't paying attention to all the great engineering we've put into this. But once again, let me just emphasize again, signs can't fix bad engineering. So you can put up all the signs you want, but you shouldn't be putting up signs to fix bad engineering. We should engineer well in the first case. And so you can see the sign on the left, yes, drive carefully, our squirrels can't tell one nut from another. That's very true. And the sign on the right, interesting sign showing a crash will occur. It's warning the bicyclist to watch for the cars turning right. And so it shows a explosion or crash there if the bicycle is not paying attention to the cars. Kind of creative use of signing, but again, we shouldn't be trying to fix design issues with signing. This is an engineering failure in this case. This is a guardrail that went through a vehicle. The vehicle hit the end of the guardrail. Guardrail should not go through the vehicle. It should never go through a vehicle. The guardrail should be designed to crumple away and bringing the vehicle to a safe stop, but it should not ever go through the vehicle. This guardrail went all the way through the vehicle and all the way through the person who was in the vehicle. And so, really engineering failure is what this is here. The guardrail system did not operate the way it needs to here. Let's look at some engineering things we do for run-off-the-road crashes. One of the first things we want to do is warn the driver, hey, you're running off the road. We looked at the audible and vibratory markings. This is, ground and rumble strips. We see them on interstates and, many high-speed roadways. This is treatment just to, again, warn the driver, hey, you're leaving the roadway. Wake up. Pay attention. Get back on the roadway. Sometimes, even after the warnings, we may need to remove things. In this case, a lot of trees on the left-hand side of the road. Those are real close to the road. I would remove them. Some people don't like to remove trees. Trees can be replanted. You can plant new trees. You can't plant new people. And so when people wrap their cars around trees, it's not a good sight for the people. And so, those trees look awful close to the road. I'd be very tempted to remove them. Remove the trees when you can. Remove the things that are hazardous to the roadway environment whenever you can. Sometimes we have to relocate things. There's this utility pole close to the roadway here. If we can push that back, further away from the road is better. And even though it may be 2 inches outside of the clear zone, if we can put it an additional 20 feet outside the clear zone, that's better still. Because, some vehicles will travel outside the clear zone. And just because it's outside the clear zone, it's nominally safe. But is it substantively safe? And so if we can relocate those things, further back from the roadway, we can make our roadways safer. Another thing we can do, reduce the impact. This is the breakaway sign support. And, if a vehicle hits this sign, it's going to shear off at the bottom of the bolts. The sign's going to go flying, and the vehicle's not going to wrap itself around the signpost. The sign's just going to go flying off into the woods or something. And so another run-off-the-road crash treatment. Any vehicle that leaves the road shouldn't hit anything that's going to bring the vehicle to a abrupt stop. All those things should break away like this. This is breakaway signpost. Some things we don't want to break away. It's tough to make breakaway bridge piers, and so those kind of things should be shielded so a vehicle can't hit the bridge pier, not wrap itself around the bridge pier. And so we would want to shield the bridge pier, redirect the vehicle so they don't hit those things. And if you can't do any of those other things, make things break away or relocate or remove them, at least put some reflective material on it, put an object marker in front of it, delineate it, mark it at least. If you can't move it, if you can't completely eliminate the hazard, at least mark it so people have a fighting chance, so people see something that might be there in the roadway system. So these are some of the engineering things we have to do, again, to address runoff road type crashes. This is another engineering type of thing that makes our roadway safer, is good drainage treatment. This is a location where, wow, look, there is high water. Yes, really high water. And this reminds me of Franklin Boulevard in Tallahassee, up really close to the central office there, up close to the Burns building. I used to work in Tallahassee in the central office. And back several years ago when I was up in the central office, Franklin Boulevard would be a very dangerous place to be if had real sudden heavy rains. Many times cars got washed into the ditch of Franklin Boulevard, and many people died in the Franklin Boulevard ditches just due to heavy drainage running down the hills and into the ditch in Franklin Boulevard. And like I said, cars got washed into the ditch and washed downstream. And so drainage is also an engineering issue related to highway design, that needs to be thought of, needs to be addressed as we do our engineering of the roadway. That the drainage is not just get all the water in a safe place so we don't pollute the aquifer with all the contaminants we wash off the roadway. It's also get the water off the roadway so that the roadway is dry and so we don't drown people, and so we don't have hydroplaning and stuff. And so, certainly some drainage work needs to be done on the road you see here. And like I've said before, we shouldn't be using signs to fix bad engineering. So how about that? Water on the road when raining. Whoa. Newsflash there. Water on the road when raining. All right. So again, don't use signs to fix bad engineering. Fix the engineering. There is a right way and a wrong way to do engineering, and 2.2 wrongs does not equal a right. So let's look at some of the right things we can do. This looks like a good guardrail end treatment. It looks like everything's set up well maintained. One caution though I would have, it looks like this guardrail treatment is here for any errant vehicle to protect what looks like pedestrians that might be on this walkway behind it. But it looks like they've also put in a wooden pedestrian rail on the back side of the guardrail. And it's on separate posts, and you can see it's bolted. The wood looks like a 2x6 or 2x8, bolted into separate 4x4 posts there. The guardrail itself looks like it's set up properly to receive a vehicle, but is the guardrail going to collapse, but then you have a 2x6 fly through your windshield instead? And so I don't know if this combination has been tested. And so it's one of those things, we've got good engineering on the one side, and we've put some things on the back side for the pedestrian. Will that work together as a system? And that's a good question. I don't know the answer to, but it really would need to be crash tested as a system, having that wooden pedestrian railing on the back side of the guardrail here. So interesting situation there. This is a location. This is on the Courtney Campbell Causeway. It's an old tubular guardrail installation, but whenever you hit guardrail is going to deflect some. The engineering allows for the guardrail to deflect to allow the redirection of your vehicle. This guardrail is not going to be able to deflect much because it's got this concrete post here. So if you left the roadway here, hit this and hit that guardrail, you'd also hit that post, and it would not be a pretty sight. So not a real good installation here of, guardrail trying to protect you from the post. You would still hit the post in this case because there's not deflection distance provided here. Now, sometimes we can try to get a little too fancy with our engineering. I mean, let's try to avoid getting too fancy like this. This kind of stuff is really technically feasible, I think, nowadays with all the facial recognition kind of stuff that is out there. We could do this kind of stuff, but we don't want to get too technical and too fancy with our engineering as we try to make our roads better and safer for people. Let's keep things simple. This is a location up in Pasco County. They were having some problems with people driving through this intersection up to the next intersection. They're fairly closely spaced, and so people seem to be ignoring the first intersection here and just driving straight through the red light to get to the next intersection. And so we came through and put in the back plates with the retroreflective borders. It really adds a lot of visibility to the signal in the daytime, adds a whole lot of visibility at night. So really helps the signal stand out better at night. Again, very simple. So, keep your engineering things fairly simple, easy to use. But when you do these kind of things, one of the things you want to make sure you do is pay attention to the details. The details are really important. Make sure when you put them in there that you put them in properly. So pay attention to the details when you're making those engineering improvements. We have a lot of guidelines and standards that we use when we're doing the engineering side of safety. And the Highway Safety Manual, the MUTCD, the AASHTO Green Book, all these are good standards, good guidelines for making the roads nominally safe. But they also help tie engineering to enforcement. The MUTCD, for instance, is adopted by statute, by Florida statute. And so in order for a law enforcement officer to make something enforceable or to write a ticket, it has to be a speed limit sign that is in accordance with the manual and uniform traffic control devices. If the speed limit sign or the stop sign or the signal is not in conformance with the MUTCD, the officer isn't going to be able to really enforce it. And, that's really the real genesis of the MUTCD. Many years ago, before the first MUTCD, each state kind of did their own thing. And as interstate travel started to come about, people traveling from state to state, one state used yellow stop signs, another state would use red stop signs. And so as you travel from one state to the next, you see these signs and you go, what in the world is that? And so the Federal Highway Administration said, we need to have some uniform standards. So as people travel across the country and they go from place to place, there's uniform traffic control devices. And so that's why we have the manual and uniform traffic control devices. It's just like, Florida DOT. If you're doing any work with DOT, one of the things you hear is CPR, consistent, predictable, and repeatable. And so that really needs to be our approach in engineering from a safety perspective too, that we want to be consistent, we want to be predictable, and we want to be repeatable so that the users, the roadway users, know what they're seeing, understand what it is we're trying to communicate to them, and they know how they're expected to respond. So that's being consistent, predictable, and repeatable. That's what the MUTCD is all about. That's using standards properly. One of the things, if you're ever involved in a court case, the question is, what would a reasonably prudent person do? And if you can say this is how it's typically done, how it's done, all over the state uniformly, then a reasonably prudent person would expect to respond a certain way to something that's done consistently in the same way. And so again, it's being consistent, predictable, and repeatable. Now this starts to tie us into enforcement, because again, engineering has to be done properly to support enforcement. The E's all really tie together. And so looking at the things you see on the screen now, are these things going to be enforceable? In the upper left, the 9.5 mile an hour speed limit. Is that going to be enforceable? Well, no. I mean, that doesn't meet the manual and uniform traffic control devices. It's not going to be enforceable. The picture on the left-hand side, the lower left, you've got regulatory signs up above, but the markings down below disagree with that. So if someone violates the lane assignment and does something wrong, is that going to be enforceable? Well, you've given them conflicting information. It's not going to be enforceable. Picture on the right, this is interesting. This is out in Las Vegas. And the sign says right lane must turn right, max exempt. So what does that mean? If your name is Max, you don't have to turn right? What does that mean? Well, unless you're from the area, you probably wouldn't know that the transit system there is called the MAX, and the MAX is exempt from turning right there. They can go through from the right turn lane. So that's what the MAX exempt is all about. But again, Las Vegas, you have lots of tourists. If I was a tourist there, would I know that? If my name was Max, and I got a ticket, and wait a minute, it says I'm exempt. The sign says I'm exempt. And so, again, we got to do the engineering with a mindset towards this has to be something that could be enforceable as we're trying to give direction and guidance to motorists. We want to set up law enforcement to succeed in their part, helping us, the engineers, to make our roadways safer. So that's what the point is here, is that the engineering has to support enforcement. Another interesting thing in this picture on the right, you'll notice the red indication is on, but it's not the top indication. And that is a real, safety issue there in terms of, for a colorblind motorist, what do they see? It looks like the yellow light is on for them because red is always supposed to be at the top. And so what they have at the top in this location is actually a special signal for the MAX to do some queue jumping. And so, again, the engineering here doesn't support enforcement. Again, if I was a colorblind motorist and blew through the red light in this case, I'd have a pretty strong case that, wait a minute, I thought the signal was red. I thought the signal was yellow because the top indication wasn't on. And so, again, we want to set up our engineering to support enforcement so that enforcement can enforce properly. So again, speaking of enforcement, is this enforceable? Again, I don't think so. Conflicting information here, and we're saying all traffic must turn right, but if the left lane must turn left, so how enforceable is that situation? Not at all, I don't think. And speaking of enforcement, the enforcement folks certainly have a tough job dealing with some tough characters. It's a really thankless job in many cases, but enforcement is a big part of making our roadways safer. Sometimes we do engineering to try to help out enforcement. I'm not sure this really helps them out a whole lot, but sometimes we try to do engineering stuff to help them out. But like I said, enforcement has a really tough job. They're the ones that often, respond to the crashes and have to deal with, mangled cars, mangled people, really nasty situations. I remember I was doing a training class in Jacksonville one time, and one of the people in the class was a traffic homicide investigator from Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and he showed me a presentation that he had to make he was asked to make this presentation to the players of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was interesting. The Jaguars coach came to him and said, "Can you do something? My players that I'm paying millions and millions of dollars a year to play football can't come to practice because they're tied up in court because they're DUI cases and things like that." And he said, "Sure, I'll do something." And so he put this really gross graphic presentation together of some of the crash scenes he'd investigated where people were split in half and their brains spilled all over the roads and stuff. And his point was, these were all DUI crashes. You guys are rich enough, you could have somebody drive you around so you can avoid these kind of crashes and so you can show up for practice. And it was, the coach said it was very effective, that the players, responded well and stopped getting into so much DUI trouble. So it was a very effective presentation there. But the law enforcement officers, again, have to respond to the crash scenes like this, try to figure out what happened, fill out crash reports so that, from the engineering side, we can come back later and see, what can we do to try to make our roadways safer in those situations? Are there anything we can do from an engineering perspective? And so, enforcement has a real big role to play in, making the roadways safer in terms of doing crash reports for us, but also enforcing the speed limits and the other traffic control devices that we've set out there. And so, a big player in safety is our enforcement partners for sure. This is some of the stuff the community traffic safety team did a couple years ago for the Hernando County, sheriff's office there, putting out some little cards for players. So working with our enforcement partners through the CTSTs there. And a couple years ago, got the NHTSA grants. The administrator of NHTSA and DOT Secretary Don Skelton speaking as they get a nice grant to do enforcement. And City of Largo, one of the big beneficiaries there, and they aggressively went out and started doing pedestrian enforcement. So they started ticketing people, and some people weren't too happy about the tickets they were getting, but people they started with warnings, 367 warnings the first month, and then they started slamming people for pedestrian violations. And so enforcement, again, a big part of the safety puzzle, making the roadways safer through enforcement. And again, some of the enforcement efforts going on here, but one of the things when you talk to enforcement officers is they see a lot of their role as really educational. So we're tying now into the third E, education, where the officers hand out a lot of the things that DOT provides, the backpacks, the little cards that DOT provides to educate people, hey, this is how you're supposed to use this type of device. This is where you're supposed to cross the road. You need to come to a complete stop before turning right on red and those kind of things. And so enforcement also plays a significant role in the next D, which is education. Some of the education initiatives District 7's been very active in. You see PEDMAN up there, and Stop and Look, Eyes on Hillsborough, many different educational initiatives, always different educational initiatives going on at the district, trying to reach out and get the safety message out to people. So a lot of good things going on there. Some of the other cards that we pass out, ATV, road rules, motorcycle safety, recipes for the road is an excellent thing that's put out Christmas time every year. Excellent educational material. That E, the education E. And other little bookmarks, buckle up, drinking and driving, English and Spanish type things, a lot of good educational material coming out. Sometimes the educational material gets very graphic. This young lady you see here, very pretty young lady. She was hit by a drunk driver. Over 60% of her body got burned. And so it's a very sad story, but it's a very graphic educational tool to try to reduce drinking and driving crashes. And so, again, the education side can sometimes get very graphic, but sometimes we need to do that kind of wake up to get people, don't drink and drive. Get a designated driver. One of the really good educational programs we have going throughout Tampa Bay right now, the Walkwise, and there's Jason Jackman in the reflective vest there. He and Julie Bond doing a great job with Walkwise all over Tampa Bay. You can see on the left they're doing it with some young people, and on the right doing with some people young at heart, if you will. And so, again, excellent program to really reach out to teach people how to operate in our roadway environment, how to walk wise. But one of the things I often hear from other safety professionals is, well, you can't fix stupid, because here goes this guy crossing mid-block, right in the middle of traffic, and you can't fix stupid. Well, Walkwise is trying to do that, to educate people so they don't make stupid choices, so they make wiser choices. And so I really applaud Walkwise for the things they're doing, because one of the things they do, you take the Walkwise pledge and you pledge to be an ambassador to tell others to walk wise. And so I think it's an excellent program, really doing some good, powerful stuff there. This is another good program, CarFit. I did work with a CarFit operation one time, a CarFit setup. And CarFit is a really cool educational tool. It really helps get the driver to where they fit well in the car. Many people are sitting too far back from the steering wheel to where the airbag deployment won't really do all that it's designed to do. If you're not seated in the proper place and not properly oriented in the vehicle, you really can't operate the vehicle safely. And so CarFit is a really interesting safety program to really help the vehicle owner fit better in the car so you can operate better in the roadway environment. So excellent safety program here, excellent educational process here in CarFit. So really great program. Their web address is right there. If you're interested in having a CarFit event in your area, I recommend it highly because it's a really good program. And one of the things they really do is reach out to some of the senior drivers. And it's really interesting when you start looking at many of today's senior citizens, in the married couples, the husband always drove, and so the husband's now passed away, and so the wife is driving, and she hasn't really spent a whole lot of time behind the wheel, and she doesn't know how to operate the mirrors in the car. And so just helping her to find where to adjust the mirrors, how to adjust the mirrors, useful things like that, so she can operate more safely in the vehicle is a useful safety thing. Educating, again, the vehicle owner how to be safe within the car. So excellent safety program there as well. All right, EMS, the fourth E. EMS really typically does not play much of a preventative role. They respond to the scenes. The one exception, EMS typically is fairly involved. In many of the CTSTs, they will have EMS involvement, and so they do play a good part of education, getting out some of the educational material. But often, EMS is reactive rather than proactive in that they show up at the scene and deal with the crash that has already happened. But that's a very important role because they make the crashes more survivable. There is what's called the golden hour. Usually within 60 minutes of a crash occurrence, the things that happen then determine whether that person lives or dies. And so EMS has a vital role to make those crashes when they occur more survivable. And so that's EMS as our partner really helps make the crashes much more survivable when they occur by getting the proper people with the proper training applying the proper treatment to the people and getting them quickly to the hospital where they can really receive the right treatment. So EMS, a vital part of the team. So I've talked about the first 4 E's: engineering, enforcement, education, EMS, but I said there's 5. Well, what's that 5th one? Well, in the safety pie, I like to say we all have a piece, but no one has the whole. Engineering has a role to play, enforcement has a role to play, education has a role to play, EMS has a role to play. But what's the missing piece? And well, the missing piece really is everyone else. That's the 5th E, everyone else. Because it really doesn't matter how well we engineer it, how well it's enforced, how well people are educated, if they still make bad mistakes, if they still don't pay attention, if they still text when they drive, if they still aren't paying attention to the signs and the markings and the signals, if they run through the red light. It doesn't matter. We can all be doing a great job with our engineering, enforcement, and education, and EMS, standing by, ready to do the things they do very well. But if the drivers, the pedestrians, make foolish mistakes, we're really not going to be any safer. So the 5 E's of safety are engineering, enforcement, education, EMS, and everyone else. We've got to get everyone else involved in it. And why is it important? Well, you see things like this all over the road. You see this little popsicle stick here, this drive safely marker. Someone died right there, in the foreground. If you look a little further in the background, there's another one of those things. Another person died right here in this same stretch of roadway. This little white cross on the side of one of the roadways in Florida. Again, someone died there. Somebody lost their life there on that roadway. Another person died here on this roadway in Florida. This is a location. This is in one of the counties there in District 7, and I was out doing a field review at this location, and I saw this on the side of the road. I had some of the folks from the county with me, and I said, "Oh gosh, man, what happened there?" And there was a young high school age kid driving his pickup truck, and he left the road here and went head on into that pine tree there and lost his life. And so I went over to the side of the road across from where the pine tree was, and that's what I found. It's pavement edge drop off on that side. This is on a hill, and what happened is the water runs off the road, and then since it's on a hill, the water runs down beside the road, and it washes away the shoulder. And so the shoulder just keeps getting washed away in the heavy rains. And so very significant pavement edge drop off. And the vehicle left the pavement, two wheels off the pavement. The guy tried to get back up on the pavement, overcorrected, and when the front wheel finally caught, it shot him across the road head on into that pine tree. And so that's where that young man lost his life. And again, why is all this that we're talking about here today important? People are losing their lives on our roads. We can do better engineering, and our engineering needs to support our enforcement, and our enforcement needs to support our engineering. They work well together. Education, we're all involved in education to get the word out to all the people out there. EMS, when there is a crash, get there quickly, do their job, and get those people the help they need to recover quickly. And then we got to get everybody else involved so that we can reduce the number of crashes like this. So again, those are the 5 E's of safety: engineering, enforcement, education, EMS, and we got to get everyone else to be a part of this. And with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions or comments. So, Anthony, we got anything? Ooh, looks like we got a lot of things in the meeting chat.
I've been watching the chat, and there has not been any specific questions to your presentation.
Okay.
There was some folks had audio issues.
Okay. All right. I see one question has
kudos from folks though.
Okay, well good. I see one question. Has a study been conducted using white retroreflective tape on guardrails? There's been a few different treatments used on guardrails we're using right now in District 7 white reflectors on top, mounted to the top of guardrails. Some locations use reflectors set into the guardrail, and so I mean there is some stuff doing trying to make the guardrail more retroreflective, and it seems to be fairly effective. Again, it's one of those things of if the guardrail's on the left side of the road, you want to use yellow markers or yellow reflectors. If it's on the right side of the approach, use the white so it matches the pavement markings that you're supplementing there. Okay. I recently heard that District 7 policy has changed, no longer installing yield or stop bars at mid-block pedestrian crosswalks. Is someone there from District 7 that wants to talk to that specifically?
There's a 975 number. I can unmute it. Maybe this is the... District 7, are you there?
Lawrence Taylor is, but...
Who? How are you all today?
Doing good.
Peter just left the room. He'll be right back. Maybe he can address it when he comes back.
Okay, so we'll side table that discussion for when Peter steps back into the room. That's a great question, though, from St.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, there has been a lot of talk about, do we do it? And I think a lot of the discussion has gone about, do we put a stop bar down if you're not required to stop all the time? And because if you have people seeing a stop bar and they stop when no one is expecting them to stop, it may increase the incidence of rear-end collisions. And so I don't want to speak to, I'm not aware of a written District 7 policy, but I know that was some of the discussion. And so I'll let Peter comment what the real policy is. But I know that's some of the discussion is that, do we want to put stop bars down where people don't have any obligation to stop, consistently? And so,
Larry, thank you. This is Peter Hsu from District 7. Thank you for the question from St. Pete. This is a question we also asked Tallahassee. So I can tell you it's not a District 7 policy, it's a statewide policy. They mentioned to us they are under the revision process. So we don't know yet, but in the previous practice, we really have seen, especially St. Pete, they do it on Sunken Garden, they did it on yield bar. So we have asked that question to Tallahassee, what is the correct way? So we haven't received the answer back. So St. Pete, you can probably keep going what you're doing, and the Sunken Garden, since you said the case before, using the yield bar. But in the future, we will definitely have more better guidelines from Tallahassee.
And again, that is all about DOT wants to be CPR, consistent, predictable, and repeatable all across the state. And so, Tallahassee, I guess, will come up with some guidance for that.
Peter, do you know if that guidance from Tallahassee regarding the mid-block locations will also discuss channelized right turn lanes?
I'm sorry, but Peter has left the building.
Peter has left the building once more. It seems like it would. I mean, whatever you do at mid-block, I mean, at a channelized right turn, you would want to do as well.
Okay, he's back.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, Anthony's question was on channelized right turn lanes. Stop lines or yield bars there?
Wow, I think that's another CPR answer. Larry already answered very, very great. We should give everybody a test. What's the full name of CPR? I will give everybody a candy. Really, we don't know yet. This is all Tallahassee issue, CPR issue.
All right, do we have other questions? Let's see. Any other questions? Is anybody still there?
If there's no more questions, this is Dennis Falloon. I'd like to make a comment before this closes out. Just remember now that the AICPs are being worked on, and they'll be in place here shortly. And then if you want your PDH credit, if you're a professional engineer, please follow the links that were provided to fill out your form and submit it back to Larry Hagan for your one credit hour of PDH. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Anthony?
Okay, well, I guess this concludes our webinar. I will end the recording now. We'll stay on the line for a few more minutes if anybody has any other comments or questions.